Hi everyone, I'm Daniel, and I'll be the second negative speaker. The affirmative side said that people have a right to know what they're eating, and of course people have the right to know what they're eating, but they said without stigmatizing what they're eating. And labeling the GMO foods kind of leads customers to think that they're harmful. And an article from Food Navigator USA says the issue is now so polarized that any disclosure could end up serving as a warning label. And it urged the USDA to include a disclaimer along bioengineered food labels, such as no material difference has been shown between ingredients created using bioengineering and ingredients created without bioengineering. So any sort of disclosure of what is like in the food, what is genetically modified, sort of makes customers think that it shouldn't be in the food, when really the foods are totally safe to eat, and there would be a lot less food if the genetically modified foods weren't a lot more widespread. From Scientific American, they said, compared with conventional breeding techniques, which swap giant chunks of DNA between one plant and another, genetic engineering is a lot more precise and is less likely to produce unexpected results. The US Food and Drug Administration also has tested all the GMOs on the market to determine whether they're toxic or allergenic, and they're not. Responding to the other claim that most Americans, about 90%, want labels, and more than half of California wants the change. There was a measure on the ballot in 2012, Prop 37, which was requiring labels on genetically modified food, and it did not pass. It had 47% of Californians voting for it. And if most Americans, about 90%, want the labels, then where are all those Americans coming to the polls and voting for the labels? And also, if more than half of California wants to change, then it should have passed also. Adrian also mentioned a 2003 poll and a 2007 survey saying about 90% of people wanted labels on their food. But those were over 10 years ago, so it might be different now. And for the Proposition 37, if 90% of people wanted that labels, then it should have been a lot higher and should have passed. Also, the level of detail on the labels, in the Vermont bill that Danielle mentioned, it just says partially produced with genetic engineering. And I feel like adding that label won't help consumers decide what to buy. From the Genetic Literacy Project, it says, although foods already contain numerous labels, a vast majority of them are misleading, wrong, or just a marketing tool to sell something. And the GMO label will add to confusion and give food companies one more way to mislead people for profit. Adding this label to the food doesn't give any information on what's really in the food. It just says that it's been partially produced with genetic engineering, which is a vast majority of all the foods in grocery stores and crops. The labeling also increases cost of foods, even if it is just one time to relabel everything. For the Vermont labeling bill, it substantially increased the cost of foods for families not just in Vermont. From the Corn Refiners Association, they said at a minimum, the Vermont law costed consumers across the country about $4 billion, or approximately $50 per family for label changes. So a lot of these, companies that have to do a lot of labeling changes may want to switch to non-GMO if people are so opposed to them, and such a switch would cost $82 billion annually because of shortages of food and increased costs of water and energy associated with growing them.